You have found Authentic Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggle stories and triumphant successes of business owners across the land. Downloadable audio episodes can be found on the podcast link found at drawincustomers.com. We're locally underwritten by the Bank of Sun Prairie. My name is James Kademan, entrepreneur, author, speaker, and helpful coach to small business owners across the country. And today we are welcoming / preparing to learn from Nicole Moll, the founder of Box of Balloons. And Nicole's got a great story, and we are here to share it today. So Nicole, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited because I know a little bit about Box of Balloons, but I guess I want you here today because I feel like there's so much more.
Yes.
So let's start with what is Box of Balloons?
So Box of Balloons is a 501c3 nonprofit.
All right.
We started here in Wisconsin, but now we are national.
Nice.
And so we are on a mission to give birthday parties to children in need.
Okay.
So we really want to make sure that every child is celebrated and each birthday is happy.
Very cool.
Yes.
And you founded this?
Yes. So I started it. I started it 7 years ago.
Wow.
And I have a degree and background in social work.
Okay.
And I have 3 little kids, and they were very little at that time. And we were kind of in this pattern of every weekend going to friends' kids' birthday parties. And, you know, they were really fun and always themed. And one day we were driving home, and I thought, gosh, even if you do it really simply, it takes a lot of time and resource to put on a birthday party. And so just with my social work background, I started to think, what are families in need doing? You know, a family that's struggling to find housing or food, but they still have a child with a birthday coming up. You know, how are they celebrating that? So I started reaching out to some social workers that I knew. And all across the board, everyone said this is a huge need because all kids have a birthday.
Yeah.
But there's just no resource for it. And so some social workers were trying to, you know, provide cupcakes or a book or something, but nothing was consistent, and it was all out of their own pocket.
All right.
So it wasn't, you know,
Not
consistent.
sustainable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I thought, gosh, what could we do about this? And I also at the time was looking for something, a way to volunteer with my own kids. But like I mentioned, they were really small, and so most places you have to be 16 or 18, and it's a long process. And so I thought, okay, well, what if we created something to not only serve the kids in need and get their birthday celebrated, but a way for me and others to volunteer with our own children.
Clever.
So I reached out to schools. I started with schools and the social worker. So here locally, I contacted one of the elementary schools, the social worker, and said, you know, is this a need? Could you use something? And she said yes. So I gathered friends and family at a local coffee shop and said, hey, I have an idea. What if we put everything needed for a themed party in a box?
Nice.
And just gave it to the family. No strings attached. I had heard about an organization in New York who was celebrating birthdays, but they were going into the schools on the weekends.
Okay.
And the volunteers were actually setting it all up and putting on this big party. And I thought, well, I can't do that just with my own time and commitment. And I thought, you know, what are the parents doing and how are they feeling? You know, I really wanted to be more behind the scenes and be able to empower the parents and let the child see the celebration coming from their parents.
Yeah, not just some random stranger.
Exactly. People they don't know or, you know, will probably never see again.
Right.
So
that puts parents, I imagine, in a perceived, maybe negative light. They're just like, oh, you don't care about me, but this random stranger.
Look at all these people.
Me a party.
Exactly.
Where's that lady?
Yes. So
Got
we didn't want that. And just logistics, you know, a lot of families in need, they might have to celebrate at the park or at a homeless shelter or a domestic abuse shelter. And so we wanted that flexibility.
All right.
So that's where the idea of putting everything for the birthday party into a box.
Yeah, hence the name Box of Balloons.
Exactly.
I like it. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, so that's kind of how it started.
So at the time, were you working somewhere else?
Yes, at the time I was working somewhere else. I was working for a village in a recreation department.
Okay.
So I've always been doing some sort of work with children and families. And I thought, well, if we could just celebrate one child, let's just see how this goes. I had people on board willing to help. And so we just started with one.
Nice.
Yeah.
And how did you how did you first get the box of stuff?
So we decided to just get plain boxes, and we still use plain boxes because that then lends another volunteer opportunity. So we have a lot of kids, Girl Scout troops, classes who will decorate the boxes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh,
so
that's
they
awesome.
will, put happy birthday or make a wish, or they'll draw fun pictures on it. And so we'll decorate the box, and then the group that I had working with me, just volunteers, we kind of came up with 7 items that you would need for a birthday party.
Okay.
And so those 7 categories we always include into every birthday box. And
Gotcha.
so we do, tableware, decorations, a party game or activity, party favors, a birthday gift with all the wrapping and
All right.
card, and then cupcakes and candles.
Wow.
So we kind of came up with that. We did one for the elementary school, put it all together in the box. We don't take requests directly from parents, so
Okay.
it has to come from a social worker, a teacher, community advocate, anything like that. And so we gave it to the school social worker, and she delivered it to the family, and they were able to celebrate.
Wow. That is cool. So I'm trying to think, like, we can hit this from a lot of angles here. So one, why did you decide to go nonprofit versus for-profit?
Yes, so really at the time, I had no grand vision for this whole thing.
Okay.
I really just saw a need, and I had a
Logistics
solution,
later.
and I thought, well, let's see if this works.
Yeah.
But quickly after we started, people were reaching out wanting to help and make donations.
Awesome.
Which was great.
Yeah.
But then the more that happened and the more money we were raising, it became clear we needed to get an official status.
We got to get some organization here.
Exactly, yes. So that's when we decided to become official and become a nonprofit. And we kind of toyed with the idea. There was just a small group of us trying to figure out, the for-profit, nonprofit, that sort of thing. But we wanted this to be a community resource that was accessible to people. And we also, just from the beginning stages, we're seeing how people really wanted to give. And they were being really generous. And so we just felt like the nonprofit avenue was probably going to fit it better.
All right. Was it tough to get nonprofit status, to apply for it, and to go through all the hoops that you need to?
Yes and no. It was tough because I knew nothing about it.
All right, well, there's that.
So there was a learning curve.
Sure.
But we were just able to work with an online company. And the paperwork and things were fairly easy. It took a while, as with most things of that sort. It just took a while for everything to come through.
Yeah.
But yeah, then once we were official, it's...
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Now, is it to the point that you have employees?
We do now, yes. So there are 3 of us on staff.
Okay.
We're all part-time, so I also have another job that I do. And then all of our chapters, so we now have chapters all across the country.
That is so
and
cool.
those are all led by volunteers.
Wow.
So we're still mostly volunteer-based. The 3 of us that are on staff, we're part-time, and we're just now doing a lot of the logistics, the financial pieces, fundraising, operations.
Well, I imagine once you scale to a certain point, you're like, oh, we just did that up here before. Now we gotta,
Yes, when we had
navigate this, systematize it.
Exactly, when we had 2 or 3 chapters, because after we started here locally, it just all kind of spread organically, and people started hearing about it, and they were reaching out to me, can I do this in my community? And I thought, well, sure,
Sure.
more kids celebrated. We would love that. So as the chapters continued to grow and more, it just became clear, I can't do this alone. Each chapter has their own financial account, so people can make donations right to their chapter.
All right.
And then just the operations piece of it, every chapter runs the same in many ways, but every chapter is different. We have a chapter in Phoenix where there's millions of people, and then we have, chapters in small rural communities where there's a couple hundred people.
All right.
So although, the premise and the mission and all of that is still the same, one chapter might be celebrating 2 kids a month and one is doing 50 a month.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, just trying to figure out, those logistics of everything and how to keep the operations organized.
So your first volunteer, how did you find them, and how did you get them, I guess, the system going with them? Did you kind of have to make it up as you went?
Yeah, so from that first meeting, I just reached out to friends and family and said, meet me at the coffee shop.
All right.
And it was really cool because I had a couple of friends who brought other people that I didn't know, so neighbors, coworkers, friends of theirs.
Yeah.
So there were about 12 people that came, and they were not all my family, so that was great.
Yeah.
And so more people were hearing about it. So once we started here, people were posting about it on social media, telling others about it, and actually our first couple of chapters were being led by people I didn't know. They had heard
really?
about it from someone else through someone else and then reached out.
All right.
And we have an application process to become a chapter leader, and we do, background checks and everything on chapter leaders. But it was pretty cool to see that, and now most of our chapters are led by people that I did not know prior.
Yeah.
So it's just continued to spread really organically.
That is so cool. So you essentially collected donations, or by you, I mean you, your people, volunteers with
Yep.
her. Collected donations, get them in the box, gift wrapped, cupcakes made, whatever.
Yep.
And then just deliver and walk away, essentially?
Essentially, yeah, we really wanted to be behind the scenes and empower the parents or caregivers. And so we do take the box back to the social worker that requested it. And just depending on the situation, if it's at a school, usually the parents then will come and pick it up. Or the school social worker will drive it to their house. We now partner with a lot of homeless shelters.
Oh,
So the
okay.
box gets delivered directly to the homeless shelter, and then the case manager there is able to get it to the family and help them out. We do ask, so all of our community partners we work with, we do ask that they try to get a picture or feedback or
Oh, nice.
something from the party just that we can share with our volunteers. But that's really the only connection that we generally have with the family.
Yeah. Well, I imagine that's a big deal because you want to know that you're actually doing some good.
Exactly,
You
yeah.
can see the smiling faces, kids happy, birthday, all
Yes.
that jazz.
And it's been really cool to see, just with this no strings attached approach of not having any sort of stipulations with it. And so families, they have used the supplies how we thought they would, and then other times they have to get creative because maybe they're in a tiny apartment or
Oh, sure.
they're having to celebrate out at a public park or whatever it might be. We've had a couple restaurants across the country donate space so they could, have the party at the restaurant.
Oh, that's cool.
Children's museums have done that. So it's just been really unique to see how all the parties are very different.
Yeah. I bet that takes a little bit of time just to organize all that. I mean, you have to organize the volunteers, delivery and all that kind of stuff. You have to organize all the stuff that you're putting in the box. You have to organize logistics of when are you going to deliver it, how are you going to deliver it, who gets it, whatever. But then all that other stuff on top of that,
Yes.
that's a lot to keep track of.
Yes, there are a lot of layers to it now.
How do you keep track of it?
Our volunteers are amazing. Kind of in the early years, we had come up with some good systems that we still use. But we also try to keep it simple. It's a pretty simple concept, and so we try not to overcomplicate it with a lot of different policies or logistics on things.
Yeah.
But we use online forms, so social workers or teachers can just request a box online.
All right.
And then we can track those really easily. We use Sign Up Genius type places for our volunteers to be able to sign up to help out. Most of our chapter leaders have some sort of collection drop box at their house, so volunteers can just go to Target, purchase the birthday gift, drop it in the box. So we try to keep each step really simple so that we always say anyone at any age can volunteer, whether they're decorating the box or buying the birthday gift.
Yeah. That is clever.
Yeah, that we just want a lot of people being able to get involved.
All right. So has it been tough, I guess, as you grew or as you realized, there's a chapter in Phoenix or something like that? I didn't know there's a chapter in Phoenix.
Yes, there have been a lot of challenges. And I mean, like I said, a lot of it too is just I'd never run a nonprofit before. So,
Right.
Learning and, trying to find the right people, creating a board. So we have board members.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's a lot of legalities like that. We have to have board members. We've worked with a lawyer for a couple years. Now our chapter leaders sign a contract or an agreement. And of course, we know that they're volunteer and things happen, but we try to ask chapter leaders to commit to 2 years. Just
Seems
because
fair.
we don't want to get a chapter going in a community and be providing this resource and then it have to stop.
Right.
So there were a lot of things like that early on that we just had to kind of trial and error and figure out and find the right people to bring on the team, even if it was for a season. You know, we had worked with a wonderful lawyer for a season who helped us kind of with those legalities as we were moving across state lines.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been fun, but also challenging.
I bet this or as it grew, you start learning things that you didn't necessarily know that you didn't know.
Exactly. Problems that we thought, well, we didn't ever think this would be a problem.
Right. And now with the board, how do you figure out who's going to be on the board and how much control that board has?
So our board meets every other month. Our board doesn't have any part of the daily activities.
Okay.
So that has been nice in a sense that, you know, they recognize that they're not the boots on the ground generally, that our volunteers know what's happening. They know, you know, the structure of everything. Our 3 staff people are able to run things. So our board is mostly there to help guide the organization, like in a financial sense, and then help make connections with businesses. So we work with a lot of businesses for 2 annual fundraisers every year. And
I was just going to ask you where the money comes from.
yes, so a lot of our money is just from individual donors.
Okay.
We do some grants, but because we are a very unique nonprofit and we don't fit in the general grant categories.
Right, you're just like, what are you?
Exactly.
You don't fit?
Yeah, we're, you know, education, not really, but we work with schools. Homelessness, not really, but we work with homeless families. So that's been tricky. But we have come up with 2 annual fundraising events that we call the Birthday Bash.
Oh, nice.
And so one is just for adults, and it's the Birthday Bash after dark. And then our family Birthday Bash is essentially a themed birthday party that we throw, and people can purchase tickets and attend. But most of the fundraising comes from businesses who are willing to sponsor.
Very cool.
So our board is a huge part of making those connections.
All right. And I imagine those businesses are nationwide.
Yeah, we have a lot of local businesses, a lot of nationwide businesses. Our chapters now, a lot of them will run their own fundraisers and work with local businesses on those sorts of things.
Okay.
So it's been really cool to see all the business, you know, business support and just people coming together for the mission.
Tell me about the logistics of the stuff. So the plates, the cupcakes, all that jazz. If people are they donating everything for a given party? Or are they coming by and saying, hey, here's 500 plates, disperse as you see fit kind of thing?
Kind of both.
Okay.
So we have different options. So many of our boxes are filled by individuals coming together for that specific box. And so we will send out a sign up. And so you could say, I want to do the tableware. And so we would tell you, you know, we would like blue or red. We need plates, napkins, cups, and then you can sign up and just donate those items.
Gotcha, and that's where Sign Up Genius or something like that comes in.
Yes, and so people are using that, and then they just take it to the drop box, and then that's their donation.
All right.
We do have a program called Build a Box, and this kind of came into play because businesses were reaching out saying, do you have something that my team can do? We have a volunteer day, or we want to do a team building activity. We want to give back to the community. So we formed a Build-A-Box program where people, either individuals or groups or businesses, can say, I want to build an entire birthday box. And we send you the request. So, you know, Johnny is turning 5 and wants a Lego party. These are the colors. This is the day we need it.
All right.
And then the team or family or business, they're in charge of everything. So they would either go out and purchase or make the items, decorate the box, put it all together, and then deliver it back.
Oh, wow. They're doing the whole shebang.
They're doing it all, yes.
Wow. All right.
And that has been really fun to see businesses come on board. We've had a local business here in the Madison, Wisconsin area do it a couple years, and they did 15 to 20 boxes.
They really?
And they would make it a competition between departments. And so then they would
cool.
do voting, you know, whose box was decorated the coolest or whatever it might be. But
nice.
Yeah, it's been really fun. And it's just, again, a good way to get more people involved. I think a lot of times businesses, individuals, groups, they're looking for something to do and to give back. And, you know, although there are a lot of volunteer opportunities, sometimes it's a huge commitment or the process to get signed up to volunteer is a long time and commitment, and so we just want to give an opportunity to people in the community, like, you can do this one time.
Yeah.
You could deliver tableware one time, or you could sign up for every box, kind
All
of
right.
what you can do at that time.
Yeah, that's cool. Now let's talk about the kids that are actually having the birthdays. How do you find them?
So that's where we rely on these community partners. Our priority is to serve kids turning 1 to 12.
Okay.
Sometimes, depending on the circumstance, we'll do teenagers. But we try to focus on the elementary age kids or younger. And we rely on the community partners such as social workers, teachers. A few of our chapters partner with children's hospitals.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Case managers at homeless shelters. And so we rely on them to, find children who are in need, who have a birthday coming, their parents don't have the resource, and then they're able to fill out that online form.
All right. Has anybody given you pushback, like parent or anything like that?
Yeah, we have been on the news a couple of times, and just, when we're doing events and there's more publicity, we'll always get calls from parents, with their story of, my child is turning this age and I need help. And we just have to kindly say, like, we would love to help you if you are working with any sort of community partner. And it can even be a volunteer at a church. We've worked with a lot of food pantries before, doctors. So it can really be a whole variety of people. We'll just tell the parent, like, if you're working with someone, please have them contact us. And for the most part, they do.
Okay.
We haven't had too many people, like, upset about that because they're generally already working with someone on other resources. So it's a pretty logical thing to most people that person would have to reach out to us.
Have you ever had pushback from someone, let's say a social worker said, hey, Johnny's having a birthday at 5 years old. You bring the stuff and Johnny's mom or dad gets upset that there's the stuff?
No, we've never had that, but we have had a few school districts that we've tried to partner with in the past where they have kind of taken the stance of, if we're going to do this for one, we're going to do it for all.
Oh, sure.
And so that has not worked.
Right. It's
just
very
because,
tough to do.
Yeah, that's tough to
do it for one.
Yeah, it's not our mission either. I mean, our mission is really to celebrate the kids in need. We want to focus on kids who otherwise would not have a celebration.
Oh, like when you say all, you mean literally all.
All, yes.
Oh,
so if there
wow.
were, 100 first graders, they want us to celebrate every single first grader.
Got it.
Which isn't our mission.
Right.
We want to celebrate the kids who wouldn't be otherwise. So that has been an interesting challenge and pushback. And in those situations, we in the end have just not been able to partner with that school or agency.
So you can still help the kid out, just not with the school involved.
Yeah, we just have to find a different way usually to go about it. But
guess
that's been interesting.
Yeah, I can kind of understand the school's point of view because they want everything equal. So, but also from what you guys are trying to accomplish, that it's like two opposing ideals.
Yes, exactly.
All right, we'll just go at this from a different angle.
Yep.
So not the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to get creative a lot with the challenges that arise on, like, okay, how can we think about it differently?
All right. Now, as far as the gift goes, how does the social worker know what a kid wants?
We try to keep the gifts around $20 or less.
Okay.
So that was something we learned from the beginning.
Oh.
It was an
Ferrari.
interesting story, and it was really sweet. I mean, our volunteers just want the best.
Sure.
But I, at one point, was working at a local homeless shelter, and I met a family who received a birthday box from us. And the mom was telling me, how much they loved it, and she was so thankful. But she said the birthday gift was a bike.
Oh.
And obviously it didn't fit in the box. And she said we were homeless and living in our car.
Oh,
and so she was like trying to tote this bike around. And so that was just a big learning moment for us of the volunteers just want the best. And of course a 5-year-old would love a Spider-Man bike.
Right.
Like, that's amazing. But the logistics of most of the families we're serving, that just doesn't make sense. Or to buy them a video game. Well, they might not have the console to play the video game. So just trying to be more aware of those things when it comes to the gift and educating our volunteers on that. So we do ask the social workers or teachers requesting if they have any ideas, but to try to keep it $20 or less.
All right.
And we do let them know and have them let the families know that it's a suggestion. So because you ask for a Spider-Man bike doesn't mean you're going to get one. You know,
Right.
we want the volunteer that signs up to donate that item to be able to choose.
Got it.
So we try to, you know, accommodate any sort of requests, but we've also learned that we have to have limits.
Sure. Set up the box.
Yes.
So from, I guess, going back to logistics, do you typically have more volunteers than kids or more kids than volunteers?
That is always one of the biggest challenges for our new chapters.
All right.
And it's always kind of this catch-22 of we want to make sure we have enough volunteers to do the first couple requests. But we also want to be reaching out to community partners to get those requests.
Got it.
So generally, most of our chapters have more volunteers
All right.
than they need, at least at the beginning. Most of the community partners we reach out to are very on board. I mean, we don't have people saying, no, I don't like this idea, or no, I don't believe kids should be celebrated. I mean, that's not the
Birthdays aren't a
case.
thing,
Right,
right.
that's not the case. It's more so just social workers are overworked.
Oh, gotcha.
They lose the email, they can't find the link, they forgot about it, that sort of thing. So it's kind of this tricky balance of we want enough volunteers to sustain the need, but we also need to get the word out there and get the need
Sure.
going.
So that you know where the need is, kind of thing.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. So that for our chapters is tricky at the beginning, but it also can be an ongoing challenge
All right.
of just trying to keep that balance
Sure.
because we don't want to burn out volunteers by not having enough, but we also don't want too many volunteers like, well, this
Yeah, what do we
isn't
do
fun.
now?
Yeah, I don't get to help. I'm not doing anything.
Yeah, they want to feel that they're contributing.
Right.
Okay. All right. Tell me about the name and any trademark and stuff like that, because you're going local here, not the end of the world, not a big deal. When you start going national and you don't know where the people are or who they are, is it tough? Like somebody started a box of balloons in Hawaii and they're not really connected with us. Then the tax man is coming over saying,
Yes. So
Something.
we did get trademarked.
okay,
And the name really just came from our first group of volunteers trying to come up with something creative,
Sure.
something that wasn't taken.
cool name.
And now it's been fun. So it's Box of Balloons, and now everyone just calls it Bob.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we have a little mascot that looks like a box,
All
and
right.
his name is Bob, and he has cute little hands
Oh,
and a bow
funny.
on top. So that's just been a fun thing that at the beginning I never thought of. But we also wanted it to be something party related, but also keep it open enough that if we ever wanted to expand it in other areas, we could do that.
Gotcha. Other areas like different types of parties? Or, okay.
Yes, which
Got
we
it.
have never done because this has grown big enough.
Yeah, there's a lot of birthdays.
Right, but at the time it was like, well, maybe we could do, baby showers or,
sure.
Anniversary gifts or whatever it might be.
All right,
but
yeah.
now it's like,
One thing at a time.
exactly, we're
One thing at a
focusing on birthdays only.
All right. So what have been some of the challenges that have come up recently? Since you've been around, been doing this for over 7 years. And I imagine it took a little bit of teething to get it done in the early stuff. But recently, as you've, I'm guessing exponentially, right? You grow a little bit and then up. What have been some of the challenges that have happened recently?
So during COVID, that was an interesting challenge. For many of our chapters, the need really grew.
Oh,
But it was trying to figure out how to continue partnering with a lot of these community agencies that were closed or
Yeah, that's a tough one.
schools that were not meeting in person. So just trying to navigate that was really challenging.
Okay.
And then also with our volunteers, early on in COVID, most of the stores were closed or people weren't comfortable enough to go. So we kind of had to pivot a little bit, and our chapter started doing Amazon wish list.
all right.
Or creating like registries from stores so people could just purchase items and have them directly delivered to the chapter.
Got it. Okay.
So that was an interesting challenge, but most people were able to, get on board with that. And then we had to find some creative ways to deliver the boxes. If an agency was closed, we had to coordinate a time to leave it on the doorstep.
Oh, sure.
Or if the social worker is working full-time at home, we had to deliver it to their home on the doorstep. So just trying to figure out how to be creative and to keep it going. But it was also really cool to see during COVID, we had more people reaching out wanting to start chapters. So
Really?
we started more chapters in COVID than any other time.
Because people had more time?
People had more time, more people were at home, and more people seemed to just be evaluating their life. You know, where am I putting my time and my priority? I want to do something for my community. I want to give back. So now as we're kind of coming out of that, one of our biggest challenges has just been how do we keep up with that growth?
Oh, sure.
So one of our newest staff members, we just recently hired her, and she's helping with community outreach, helping with logistics of chapters. I've realized that, we have over 60 chapters now. Wow. So if they're all contacting me with questions, that's a lot of emails. So just trying to keep up with the growth. And then also to keep up with some of our chapters, there's just been turnover. Chapter leaders, I think now too, as COVID has been lessening, people are moving more or changing jobs or, things are changing in their life. So we've had a lot of chapters this year specifically turnover with chapter leaders. We haven't had to close any of the chapters, which has been great. But just logistically, it's a lot of work to interview, background check, get a new chapter leader up and running and kind of make that transition when I'm not there. So if it's a chapter in Minnesota, I'm not there to be meeting with them and help with that transition.
Right.
So, we're doing Zoom meetings, and then the current chapter leader is really having to help get the new chapter leader up and running.
Got it. Yeah, it's interesting because we're having a challenging time with employees, just like most businesses are. Where I don't know this for sure. I don't know if anybody knows this for sure. But I feel like a lot of people have found that maybe being somewhat nomadic or not laying down deep roots at all is fine now. Because maybe they had roots down before and they got uprooted. Whether they either lost their job or they were just told, hey, you got to work from home now, whatever. They're like, well, we can pivot on a dime because we had to before. So let's just make a change for the sake of change now.
Yeah, we can go anywhere.
Yeah, and it's interesting how people, I guess from what I'm seeing, I want to say partially outsider looking in, but also partially just with some of the employees that I've had, where they're just not, they're kind of like, wherever the breeze blows,
yes,
that's where I'll go.
Yes, and thankfully our chapter leaders have all been committed to helping find a new chapter leader.
Oh, that's very cool.
Or stay on board until we have found a new person to replace them. So that's been helpful. But most of the turnover has been chapter leaders moving.
All right.
Which is just interesting because, we kind of went 2 years during COVID with
no
one going anywhere. And now we've had a lot of people just moving and life changing.
That's interesting. So when let's just say someone, I don't know, 60 chapters, is there one in Denver? I don't know.
Yes, there is one.
So let's say Denver is a pretty big town, so they want to start another one. How does that happen? Do they come to you?
Yes, so I work with them, and we, again, try to assess the need with the volunteers.
Okay.
So we want to look at, is there a big enough need that 2 chapters or 3 chapters is necessary?
Now, is that based on population or some other statistic or statistics?
Yeah, population, number of schools, number of homeless shelters, just, how many agency partners are there in that area? And then a lot of it, too, we look at the logistics of travel time. So we've had chapters, for example, in Texas, we have multiple chapters. And some of them might technically be 30, 40 miles, which is not far from each other. But with traffic, it could take 2 hours.
Oh, gotcha.
So we have to also look at that. If a volunteer, if it's going to take them 2 hours to get to the drop box or for the chapter leader to deliver it back to the school or wherever it might be, that just doesn't make sense.
Gotcha.
So we're looking at a lot of different things. And a lot of times I'm working with the chapter leader. So if it's Denver, I would be asking them, do you feel like there's a big enough need? Do you feel like there's a big enough volunteer base that we could have 2 chapters? But it's generally in either the bigger cities or in really rural locations where, again, it would take an hour to drive to the next school.
All right.
That's just going to be hard.
Huh. Interesting. Now, the locations, I guess, has there ever been cities where you target? You're like, hey, we want to find a volunteer for this I don't know, city in need?
Yes.
Or whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it?
So our goal is to have a chapter eventually in every state.
Wow, okay.
So there was a time pre-COVID where we did do some targeting, just with marketing, social media. We would even just simply make posts like, hey, who do you know in
All right.
the state of Oregon or wherever it might be? And, you know, can you share this with them? And so we did do targeting, and we were trying to pick 6 to 8 states where we researched the need based on like free and reduced lunch,
All right.
number of homeless shelters, number of families every night that are homeless. And so really trying to target those states where there was that greater need. But then once COVID hit and we had so many people reaching out, we have not again targeted
Wow.
to open chapters.
All
So
right.
we may again at some point, but we haven't had to. Most people
Yeah.
are finding us based on they saw it on social media or a friend of a friend, or we had a chapter recently start in Louisiana, and she had heard of it. She was taking a college class and heard of it. Her professor was telling the class about it.
Oh, wow.
I don't know how he
Nice.
knew about it or, you know, what the connection was there, but generally people just organically are hearing about it. So we have in the past done targeted marketing for chapters, but not recently.
Got it. That is super cool. Mm-hmm. They're teaching it in class.
I know.
You can't get better advertising than that.
Yeah.
That is cool. When you first started this 7 years ago, or let's even go a year past that, when you saw we got traction, we're 503B, everything's cool. Is it 503B?
501c3.
501, numbers and
Five
letters.
something.
It's your nonprofit, and you got that part taken care of. Are you where you expected to be?
It's funny because people always say that, like, is this what you envisioned? And honestly, I did not have a vision for this.
At all.
At all. I
All
mean,
right.
I'm a planner and I'm a dreamer, but for this, I just didn't know if it would work. I didn't know if this was going to be needed. I couldn't picture the logistics.
All right.
And honestly, at the time, I was not thinking about chapters. I was thinking here locally, how can we serve the community? How can we fill this need? And honestly, at the time, you know, I've always worked another job. In addition, I have a husband and 3 kids. You know, I have a lot of things going on. And so at the time I thought, well, let's just try it. If we celebrate one child and then we decide this doesn't work or we can't do it, at least one got celebrated.
Yeah. Made a
So
kid
now
happy.
we're getting close to 7,000 kids celebrated.
Wow.
This summer we'll be celebrating that.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
it's like, I mean, I could have never imagined this.
Yeah, that is super cool.
Yeah.
Holy cow. So I guess, where do you go from here? Do you get more volunteers? Do you get more people like you or more employees to get more volunteers?
Yes, I think that's kind of the direction we're going to be heading, is just continuing to grow our employee side. It's become really clear to me in the last year or two that I just can't keep doing a full-time job and this full-time. So growing our employee side, also continuing to grow our chapters. We'd eventually like to be international.
Oh, very cool.
So after, you know, we get all the chapters in all the states here, we'd eventually like to do some international stuff.
All right.
I've done some mission work in other countries. We've had other volunteers who have, you know, we've kind of tossed around the idea of like, we want to be able to serve other countries, but we're just not quite there yet. But that's kind of on the future plans of, you know, continuing what we're doing here, getting it in every state in the United States, and then eventually going global.
That's cool. Have there been any challenges doing essentially interstate volunteering, commerce, and stuff like that, with you guys being essentially Wisconsin-based, I want to say company, nonprofit?
Yes. Yeah, it has been challenging. I mean, on a couple levels. You know, some of our chapters are bigger, want to do more fundraising, and they need a certain documentation, or they've had to, you know, become more official in their community, or they've had to create a board for their own chapter.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So just different legalities to follow in the different states. Different things during tax time to try and fill out.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because even hiring employees across state lines.
Yes.
There's some states where they're like, yeah, hire whoever you want. And other states like California, we can't even hire anyone from there because their laws are so crazy.
Yes, I know. Our newest staff member is from North Dakota.
Okay.
And thankfully that has been easy and has been working out great. But yeah, it has been tricky, and just, you know, that I'm not in every state. Like I would love to be able to meet with all of our chapter leaders in person and be able to see how things are going. But for us, that's been another positive of COVID is just Zoom has become so normal now. Everyone uses Zoom. So we now do all of our interviews for chapter leaders via Zoom. We were doing a monthly Zoom meeting for current chapter leaders.
Like the whole lot
Yeah,
of them.
anyone. Yep, we would just have a set time and day. Whoever wanted to join could join. So that has just been able to, I think, increase the communication and kind of that team morale of like we can jump on Zoom anytime. I don't have to be in your state. You don't have to be here. We can still meet with each other and work through things.
Tell me about the consistency of each box. Has that been tough to train volunteers on? Like, this is what we're looking for. These are the 7 groups of items that we're looking for. And somebody's like, hey, I want to add whatever.
Yeah, it hasn't too much because, like I said, we've tried to keep things fairly simple and to keep some things very structured. And so that is one of them.
Got it.
Although every box is completely different and unique depending on the child's age, the theme, and then the volunteers that are putting it together. We've really stuck with those items.
All right.
We have at times, there have been special cases where the social worker will tell us, you know, this child's family just had a house fire. And they could really use these items if you're able to add extra things. And then we've been able to do that. Or, you know, this family has been experiencing homelessness for several months. They could really use a Walmart gift card. If you're able, can you do that? So there have been situations where we have done that, but we try not to do that consistently. Just because, you know, we could be adding all sorts of things.
Yeah, I imagine a slippery slope or it can snowball into something way beyond what you had.
And we really want to stay in our lane. You know, this is why Box of Balloons was created, because no one else was doing this. There's a lot of organizations helping with food, helping with clothing, helping with books. You know, there's just a lot of different organizations. And so we just want to stay in our birthday lane because no one else was doing that. And then, you know, if there's opportunity for us to help them get connected to a different organization, then we'll do that.
Gotcha. That is so cool. I love that you saw this need and figured out how to take care of it and then just grew it, and it's kind of taken on somewhat of an organic growth.
Yes, it
wasn't
definitely has.
Boom, this is how we're going to make it happen. It's just kind of happened.
Yes.
And it sounds like you're having fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It is so fun. Our volunteers are amazing. All of our chapters have their own Facebook page and Instagram account.
Every single chapter does?
Yes, every single chapter. And we, as the organization, will set up the Facebook page for them and kind of get it going.
Oh, nice.
We have a volunteer on our team who does graphics every month. So if the chapters want to use these, you know, more generic graphics, they can. It's all branded, so it's easy for them to use. But it's so fun to see the different pictures they post or the stories. You know, we have a lot of like Girl Scout troops or Boy Scout troops that will partner and decorate boxes or put together boxes. And so it's just fun to see all those pictures and different people in the community getting involved.
Yeah. Tell me about the cupcakes. And I'm probably asking this just because I'm really hungry. But just... how do you figure out the cupcakes, number of cupcakes, make sure they're as fresh as they can be when you deliver them? Because I figure plates and tablecloths, that can hang out in a warehouse or in somebody's basement or garage, no problem. But cupcakes are kind of like, well, that's a time frame.
Yes.
So how does that work?
We always do a dozen cupcakes. In the beginning, we were giving the option of the cupcakes or all the supplies to make the cupcakes, but that just became too tricky, and most of the families we're serving don't have capabilities to make their own. So we cut that out. That was one of the first learning curves. We just do a dozen cupcakes now, and it depends on what agency we're partnering with. So if we're partnering with a school, they have to be store-bought cupcakes.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Or from a bakery. If we're partnering with another agency, it could be homemade. So we have a lot of like home bakers that will like
Oh, nice.
to donate cupcakes to us. A lot of our chapters have partnered with local bakeries
Okay.
who will donate cupcakes.
Very cool.
And so we try to coordinate it. Most of the birthday boxes are delivered to the social worker who requested on a Thursday or Friday, just because most families are celebrating over the weekend.
Makes sense.
So we try to pick up cupcakes then that Thursday or Friday, or have them delivered to the chapter leaders so that they are fresh.
Yeah.
There have been times, especially over COVID, where it was just like the social worker may get the box but not be seeing the family for a week or two. We would just do gift cards to
Got
either
it.
like Walmart or a local grocery store.
Okay.
So then the family could get cupcakes if they would
Got
like.
it. Got it. That makes sense.
Yes, but we've had some melted cupcakes. That was another.
Oh, no.
That was another early learning curve of we would have volunteers drop cupcakes off to the chapter leaders, front door, and it was hot.
Oh,
and then
sitting in the
they
sun. Oh,
they all
no.
melted. So there's been a little bit more coordination now with chapter leaders of like, can you drop them off at this time, or
Right.
just being aware of if
Got
it's
it.
90 degrees, they're gonna melt.
Got it. It's interesting when you said the thing about people not having the, I don't want to say ability, but the equipment or the opportunity to make their own cupcakes.
Yes.
And it just makes me think, like, we don't have any problems. I just take stuff like that for granted.
Yeah.
And I know that I've had people work for me that took stuff for granted that I'm like, we don't have anything to complain about. Nothing.
It's been really eye-opening. I mean, for me, and I have a background in social work, but it's been very eye-opening, and also eye-opening, I think, for a lot of our volunteers, just of that, like, well, I have an oven, and I have a kitchen,
Right.
and I have a pan. But if we're serving a family in a homeless shelter, they don't have access
Right.
to any of that. Or even a family in a small apartment, they might not have a cupcake pan,
Right.
or the oil that goes in the batter, or whatever it might be, the eggs.
Yeah.
So just being aware of that, and that is why some of those things like the cupcakes, the gift, we've kind of gotten more streamlined on, like, this is what we're looking for, this is always what we do.
That's cool.
And just make it more uniformed.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Just stuff we take for granted.
Yes.
I volunteered at a food bank a while ago, and it was interesting. It was just a family came in, and it blew my mind that there would be a family that was homeless. And, like, it never even dawned on me. Then I was just a kid, so
Yeah.
I didn't know. And we were poor when I was a kid, but we weren't that poor. Like, my dad had a job and all that kind of stuff. But it was eye-opening.
Yes. Yep.
Eye-opening. Like, I don't even know.
Yeah.
Like, you're kind of stopped in your tracks. Like, I thought I had a rough life. I don't have a rough life.
And then to think about, those kids still know their birthday's coming, and to them, they want to be like all the other kids at school, getting a celebration.
Yeah.
But if the parents are trying to find housing or
Right.
food,
Yeah, it's
what's our
priority.
next meal, those obviously have to be priority. But that still doesn't mean that the child doesn't see that and doesn't want to be celebrated and to feel special.
Are there some children that you've been to annually or multiple times?
Yeah, it's kind of need to need basis. We try not to always serve the same kids, but again, if it's a chapter in a rural community and they just don't have a huge population, it
Yeah.
might be the same family or child celebrated every year.
Gotcha.
But for the most part, social workers that we partner with try to choose different children.
All right.
And generally, for a lot of our chapters, there's just more need, than we can always
All right.
fulfill. Some of our chapters have to like put a limit each month,
Oh, sure.
or we got 15 requests for this month, like that's all we can handle. Request again next month.
All right.
So it just kind of depends on the need. All of our chapter leaders are volunteers, so it also depends on their capabilities.
Sure.
I mean,
It's finite time
right,
and
putting together
resources.
15 boxes takes a lot of time, and
Yeah.
figuring out the logistics of that and delivering them, and most of our chapter leaders have other jobs or
Yeah.
commitments that they're
Stuff
doing.
going on. I get it. That's cool. So, Nicole, how can people find you or Box of Balloons, or if they want to reach out on either end? I guess be a
Yes.
volunteer or...
Exactly, or request. We have a website, boxballoons.org.
Okay.
So all the contact information is there. We also have a map on our website, so you can see where our current chapters are.
Oh, nice.
So
All right.
we've had a lot of people say, "Hey, I live in Wisconsin, but I would love to help any of the chapters.
Yeah.
Or I live in Florida, but my sister-in-law is helping with the Wisconsin chapter. Can I donate there? So each of our chapters has a web page on our website with their links. So you can donate to, specific chapters. You could become a volunteer for any of those chapters.
Okay.
So you can kind of see where we're at, and then you can also see the states we're not in, so that if you are in those states and you want to start a chapter, you could do that.
Nice.
And then we're on social media, Box of Balloons on Facebook, Box of Balloons on Instagram.
All right. That sounds like a lot to keep track of right there.
Yes.
And that's what your crew is for.
Yes, we have an amazing team.
All right. Very cool. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
This has been cool. It's been enlightening. And I know that I've heard of Box of Balloons way back when. But I think when I came across, I think my wife donated something. I don't know what she did. But I was like, wait, what? They're national?
Yes.
It was one of those, like, how cool is that for something that started here?
It's interesting because, people say that here, but then people say that at a lot of our chapters.
Oh, funny.
Because it's bigger than Northwest Arkansas? What? Because that's just where they're at, and that's the chapter
it was one of those, like,
to.
It's cool what they do, and then you learn that it's bigger.
Right.
It's growing. I'm like, well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's thousands of volunteers doing this.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it's one of those things that you hope eventually you'll run out of customers.
Yes.
But you probably won't.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
So it's an interesting conundrum for something like that. So
definitely.
At any rate, what's the website again?
Boxofballoons.org.
Boxofballoons.org. Easy enough.
Yep.
This has been Authentic Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggle stories and triumphant successes of business owners across the land. We are underwritten locally by the Bank of Sun Prairie. If you're listening or watching this on the web, if you could do us a huge favor, smash that big old thumbs up, comment, and of course, hit the big old subscribe button so you can check out this as well as all kinds of other podcasts that we have. My name is James Kidman, and Authentic Business Adventures is brought to you by Calls on Call, offering call answering services for entrepreneurs looking for growth on the web at callsoncall.com, as well as Draw In Customers Business Coaching, offering business coaching services all over the country, found at drawincustomers.com. And of course, the Bold Business Book, a book for the entrepreneur and all of us, available wherever fine books are sold. We'd like to thank you, our wonderful listeners and viewers, as well as our guest, Nicole Moll, the founder of Box of Balloons. And Nicole, can you tell us that website one more time?
Boxofballoons.org.
Awesome. Check it out. Past episodes can be found morning, noon, and night. Podcast link found at drawincustomers.com. Thank you for listening. We will see you next week. I want you to stay awesome. And if you do nothing else, enjoy your business.